Jim, I'm going to fold you into this conversation. Let me bring in one more voice here. Anthony Ruggiero, senior fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracy. So, Anthony, the Chinese-controlled state newspaper, the Global Times, published an article that said if North Korea launches missiles at the U.S., then China will remain neutral. But if the roles are reversed, if it's the U.S. and South Korea who take that first hit on North Korea, that China will not sit still, will take action. What's your, first of all, do you believe them? And secondly, what's at stake for China here?
Well, it's a state newspaper that the leadership could use to put out a message both to Washington and Pyongyang, trying to, I think, tamp down the situation. I think the North Koreans probably are expecting that the Chinese would have their back in a military situation, but the Chinese are drawing a clear line if the North Koreans initiate a military strike. I think that was the purpose of the president's tweet as well, to deter North Korea from attacking.
You know that the U.S., though, has been negotiating for more than 25 years and still dealing with very similar threats. But this is what Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen from Maryland told me here just a couple days ago.
You can pass sanctions at the United Nations. You can pass sanctions at the United States. That's just words on a piece of paper unless they're actually enforced, which is why Senator Toomey and I have introduced bipartisan legislation modeled after the Iran sanctions so that we really put teeth in these sanctions. Right now, Chinese banks, Chinese firms, and others are saying that they're complying with the sanctions, but they're not. They're violating the sanctions right and left, which continues to provide aid and comfort for the North Korean regime.
So, Anthony, my question is there a lot more, wiggle room here in the sanctions to really crack down on North Korea or not? And what needs to happen to make sure the Chinese banks comply?
There's absolutely a lot more room. We are nowhere near where we were on Iran. In 2010 on Iran, we passed a UN resolution and Congress passed new sanctions law, and then we had a ramp up, a U.S.-led sanctions campaign. We don't have that right now. That's what this new resolution is. Is this where we move to a sanctions campaign? It's China, it's Chinese banks and companies and individuals that are facilitating North Korea's sanctions evasion. Companies in Singapore that are allowing North Korea to buy luxury goods. Yesterday we learned that Kuwait said they're not going to reduce the number of overseas laborers in Europe. I mean, I can go on and on and on, unfortunately, of the number of countries that are working with North Korea and violating sanctions.
Yeah. Okay.
Brooke, he makes a great point. Yeah, but just because the real teeth of the Iran sanctions were not just sanctioning Iran itself, but sanctioning trading partners who were dealing with Iran, pressuring, for instance, China in that case to not buy Iranian oil. Those are the things that really squeeze the Iranian economy in the end, and that's the one on this. And really, the only target is China, because China is the one that really does business there, and a lot of it's illicit. And if you don't address that trade, then North Korea still gets the money it needs, right, for its leaders and for its weapons program, which is really all it cares about.
All right, Jim and Anthony, thank you both so